Hello, I'm Jen Coldiron with Ozark Guidance, and since 1970, our mission has been to save and change lives through quality, compassionate behavioral health care. Thanks to everyone in the Springdale Public School System for partnering with us in that mission. And welcome to the second year of the Social and Emotional Learning series. Today we'll be going through a video called Brain and Behavior again, in which I hope to bring you information, resources, and skills to help you be more here in your human brain, able to access all of those 11 executive skills. This year, first though, I'm asking you to participate in some pre-video exercises. So hopefully you got a handout that gives you those instructions really quickly. They are to do an emotional check-in. So what feeling word describes your work week or your work day? And you can write that down individually, but I'd also love you to put it on a sticky note, and then for everyone in your building to place those sticky notes in a collected area so you can get a feel for what your colleagues are feeling. And then number two, I'll ask that you all do a word association exercise with the word conflict. So, what are words that come to your mind when you hear the word conflict? And again, you can write those to yourself, but then also perhaps place them on a sticky note, or if somebody would be willing to volunteer to write a group list up on a whiteboard, that would be helpful. And then task number three is to participate in a brain break, and I'm suggesting rock, paper, scissors Olympics, because that's fun. So those instructions, again, are on a pre-video task sheet that you hopefully got emailed. And if you haven't done them yet, please hit pause and engage in those exercises. And if you have, I'll begin. So this is Brain and Behavior. And again, I hope to bring you information, resources, and some skills that help you be in your human brains. Why? You tell me. Looking at your faculty's list of emotion words, is there a theme? Is your school like the two schools I recently visited, where the faculty's list of emotions that describe their work week most frequently included stressed, frustrated, overwhelmed, and exhausting? Now, while I think there, to a degree, is always going to be exhaustion as a theme amongst teachers, I think some of the other emotion words, including stressed and overwhelmed, could be signs that many of you, like me, often slip into your emotional brains. You flip your lid, and you're stuck down here ruminating, worrying about what's happened already or what's about to happen, concerned about time, concerned about all these pressures that are on you, for example, to stay with content, to pump out content while you're teaching, minute after minute. It's reported, for example, that 46% of teachers reported high daily stress. That is tied with only nurses for the highest rate of stress felt on a daily basis, according to a Gallup poll. Stress is the enemy of executive function. It's what sends norepinephrine, if I'm saying that right, and cortisol into your brain that hijacks your brain and causes you to flip your lid. Let's quickly review our hand model of the brain. So when your lid's on, right, your fingers represented here over your thumb is your frontal cortex, also known as your human brain in Dr. McLean's triune brain model. Here, according to Dr. Bailey, creator of Conscious Discipline, you have access to the following 11 executive skills. And if you're following along now with your video worksheet, you can start filling in those blanks. For the human brain allows us to access attention, time management, organization, planning, prioritization, working memory, impulse control, flexibility, empathy, metacognition, goal achievement, and task initiation. However, if you're feeling stressed and you flip your lid, you're more specifically going into those emotional brain centers, the limbic system, also known as our mammalian brain or our mammal brain, for it's concerned with things that might be threats. chiefly our relationship with others to the world, just as mammals are concerned with their relationships to their herds or prides and with what's happening in their environment. So they'll be more likely to survive. And if we do feel threatened, that mammal brain sends signals down to our brainstem telling us to react in order to survive. And that part of our brain is again called the lizard or reptilian brain, because it doesn't have the capacity to think through how to respond to a situation. It simply automatically reacts by fighting, flighting, freezing, or surrendering. So your stress level in your brain will determine how you see conflict in the classroom and in life in general. So, what words did you associate with conflict? Well, it's going to depend on the stress level that you're experiencing and your brain state. My guess is there are a few out there who said some positive words like problem solving, maybe communication, but I bet many of you said words with negative connotations, maybe even including yelling, power struggles, or the word disruption, because conflict can be seen as a disruption in your classroom. Did anyone say opportunity? Carl Jung did. He's a pioneer in the field of psychology, a psychiatrist from Sweden. And here's his quote: "Conflict exists strictly as an opportunity to raise our own consciousness." Let's take a look at how Dr. Bailey breaks down this perspective by describing how you will see conflict or misbehavior in your classroom according to what brain state you are in. In a survival state, she says conflict and misbehavior is perceived as a threat, and your intent is to punish that behavior. In an emotional state, conflict or misbehavior is perceived as an irritation, and your intent is to stop that behavior. And if you're up in your human brain with all of your executive skills functioning, conflict or misbehavior can be perceived as a call for help. And your intent is to respond rather than react, and to help or to teach that student. So how do we do this? Right? How do we have that optimistic perspective of when you see a conflict in front of you in your classroom, you go, opportunity, great, glad you're here. How do we do that? Two ideas are we focus on our own mental health and what we can control. Mental health for a long time has been defined as the absence of a mental illness. That's not really a helpful definition when you're talking about goal setting. But Dr. Dan Siegel and Dr. Payne Bryson, here in their book, The Whole Brain Child, have suggested a new definition. And really this comes from Dr. Dan Siegel's work. And he, again, is a creator of our handy-dandy hand model of the brain. So his definition, according to them, is being used more and more by researchers and therapists around the world. So I'll read you now some excerpts. It's based on the concept of integration, and it involves an understanding of the complex dynamics surrounding relationships in the brain. A simple way to express it, though, is to describe mental health as our ability to remain in a river of well-being. Whenever you're in the water, peacefully floating along in your canoe, you feel like you're generally in a good relationship with the world around you. You have a clear understanding of yourself, other people, and your life. You can be flexible and adjust when situations change. You're stable and at peace. Sometimes, though, as you float along, you veer too close to one of the river's two banks. This causes different problems depending on which bank you approach. One bank represents chaos, where you feel out of control. Turmoil rules the day. The other bank, they go on to say, is the bank of rigidity, which is the opposite of chaos. As opposed to being out of control, rigidity is when you are imposing control on everything and everyone around you. You become completely unwilling to adapt, compromise, or negotiate. End quote. Think to yourself, how is your day or week gone? Are you enjoying the river of well-being? Or are you part of the 46% of teachers who are experiencing high daily stress? And if so, which bank do you tend to tie off on? You know, they say that maybe if you're a right dominant person, very artsy, imaginative, you'll veer to the bank of chaos and instability. Whereas if you're more of a left brain person, maybe more into the sciences, for example, you'll veer to the left bank and be rigid and inflexible, trying to be very controlling and strict in how you manage your class. If you look around at your colleagues in their classrooms, do you get a sense for who's right brain and left brain dominant? So what do we do? How do we stay in the river of well-being? Dr. Dan Siegel acknowledges that most of us move back and forth between these two banks as we go through our day, especially when we're trying, he quotes, I quote him in saying, to survive parenting. When we're closest to the banks of chaos or rigidity, we're farthest from mental and emotional health. The longer we avoid either bank, the more time we spend enjoying the river of well-being. So how do we do this? How do we consistently row in the river of well-being? We focus on our mental health and we focus on what we can control. And one thing we can control is having a lot of fun, right? This is something that's within our control. And happened to be some of the last messages sent by Jesse Lewis before he died in the Sandy Hook tragedy. He wrote this note on a note to give to his brother. Have a lot of fun. So I've included with your email this top 10 brain breaks sheet from Ozark Guidance. That includes 10 brain breaks we think are great for all ages. And they really focus on providing what Dr. Bailey calls joy juice to kids by including the 4 elements necessary to create joy juice. And those are eye contact, touch, presence, and playfulness. So there are a lot of brain breaks out there that include activities to have kids cross the midline, but those might be exercises that they do independently on their own, like waving their hands back and forth in different directions while standing on one foot. Those are great. But these particular 10 brain breaks are about creating relationships among the students and with your participation, relationships with you. So the idea is that that eye contact, presence, appropriate touch, and playfulness are incorporated routinely into your classroom so that students are interacting more, creating relationships with each other, and through that cooperation, through that connection comes more cooperation. Plus, again, it's just fun. Other ideas from teachers that I've recently picked up for incorporating fun in regular ways in their classroom are to use a koosh ball to call on students, and through group discussions they can voluntold each other by throwing the koosh ball around to keep the discussion going. Another fun element added to the classroom are call and response techniques to get students to pay attention or calm down, as the one I recently saw in Miss Buckley's class in Fayetteville. So she picked up on Taylor Swift's popularity and she calls out, "Oh, oh, 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 you need to calm down." And the kids go, "We're being too loud." You can tell I don't listen to a lot of Taylor Swift because I don't quite have the rhythm, but I bet some of you know that song, right? And could do it better. So they practiced that, and out of nowhere, she did that, and the kids didn't miss a beat and said, "We're being too loud." And then a few minutes later, of course, because they're loud again, she did some yodeling, and they knew how to respond to that yodeling too. All the while, these just being reminders to herself too that I'm gonna have to tell kids repeatedly to be quiet. I might as well do it in a way that helps me stay up here instead of seeing their loudness as a threat to my timing and my agenda, but to keep it lighthearted and be prepared to tell students to be quiet over and over and over again. So those are just some fun strategies to think about adding a little bit more humor to your day so you can stay in that river of well-being. What's the number 2 way to do this, perhaps? Mindfulness. Mindfulness is a state, a trait, and a practice, according to mindfulschools.org. And it is increasingly becoming a proven strategy to be one of the most effective at safeguarding both the mental health of teachers and students. A more extensive definition, if you're a note taker on your worksheet, is the following. Mindfulness is a state of active, open attention to the present moment. Being mindful means observing one's thoughts and feelings from a distance without judging them as bad or good or bad there. And that's from Mr. Kabat-Zinn, who is a leader in this field. According to a recent Robert Wood Johnson Foundation brief, mindfulness has been shown to reduce teacher burnout, negative affect, sleep-related impairment, and daily physical symptoms related to stress. Sounds great, right? So let's hear both elementary and high school students describe mindfulness in 2 short videos from mindfulschools.org next.
When I do a mindful activity, it feels very quiet and calming and centered, like I'm the only person in the room.
Schools are places where there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of dysregulated nervous systems.
When they come in the morning, we do mindful practice, and sometimes they come upset or tired, but they know that they can find calmness in their breathing. It helps them to focus.
Sometimes, like when people bother me a lot, I'll be like a less calm student, like have a lot of anger.
What if we just created a space where we could take a moment to really come back to what's most important?
Mindfulness is like where you go to a quiet space and focus on your breath and what's around you. It's like for another way to cool down when you're mad.
When I can't figure out the answer to a question on a test, I get really stressed sometimes, but then I stop and then I notice what I'm doing.
That pause impacts our well-being, but it impacts how we react and respond.
I say, okay, right now I'm feeling very angry. I need to calm down. And then I say, I can do this if I review it one time. Maybe I just need to count down from 10.
To move towards these 21st century skills, there's so many foundational pieces that help those things happen. While we're breathing in and breathing out, if our mind starts to wander till lunch or thinking about other things, and as soon as we realize we're thinking, we can come right back. It's like we're getting our minds ready to just stay right where we are.
My mind is like, it wandered off to like a place that's calm and peaceful.
Oh, wow. How did that feel?
It felt great.
It's a way for us to approach supporting children's social emotional development. Kids need to be taught skills really intentionally. Mindfulness has helped me just kind of slow it down a little bit and just be really present for parents and for students, acknowledging teachers' needs.
Teachers have a lot of stress. Mindfulness had helped my practice and become a better teacher, having the calmness that the kids need to solve their problems, to being able to learn better.
By starting with the adults in the community, we're helping the whole community. It impacts our ability to listen and to relate to other people and have empathy, build resilience and confidence in kids, which is so powerful.
When I do mindfulness, I feel calm and I have confidence.
When I do mindfulness, I feel calm and steady.
If everyone in the world practiced mindfulness, it would be more peaceful and they wouldn't be as afraid to express themselves and tell themselves to calm down. If everybody used it, there wouldn't be as much problems.
And here quickly is another minute from high school students.
I'm going to close my eyes and take some breaths.
Mindfulness is a way to calm down and to collect yourself.
It's an exercise to let some things go that you're holding in. It's getting into my body and out of my thoughts.
Mindfulness is you're at peace and you're calm and you can understand what's happening around you.
Kids will often tell me when we're practicing mindfulness, it's the only time during the entire day they stop. And that's amazing.
Okay, we saw 2 basic mindfulness exercises in that first video that you could start using today. So let's try them. The first one included listening to the bell. So let's try it. Sit up straight, get comfy, both feet on the ground. You can keep your eyes open or close your eyes, and I'll just hit the bell. And when you cease to hear it, raise your hand. Ready? That could be an attention getter. It could be done to signal it's time to transition to the next class. Or this could be the signal that it's time to start and stop an additional mindfulness exercise, such as the hand model for breathing, or hand breathing, or gimme 5, if you want to call it that you also saw in the first video. So let's try that next. Everybody stick out one of your hands, doesn't matter which. And again, sit up straight, both feet on the floor, eyes open or eyes closed, and start with your other finger on the base of your thumb. And as we go up, you inhale. Then as we go down, you exhale slowly. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Hopefully you feel just a little bit more present in the here and now. And that's the goal. That's the idea. That we take time to pause and breathe and just get here, not worried about the past or thinking about the future. And the deep breathing also helps to stop those harmful hormones from hijacking our brains. The latest book, produced by ASCD, focuses on an activity, focuses on teaching teachers how to bring mindfulness into the classroom. So the 3 factors that they recommend be included in mindful practice include focusing on an activity, such as breathing or listening to the bell, or maybe filling the shapes of pumpkins in your hand for this October theme, right? But you're focused on an activity. Secondly, to openly monitor ideas, feelings, and sensations that interrupt that focus, and to have a curious, non-judgmental attitude towards whatever it is that comes up. So the goal is to improve awareness of the present moment. And again, this helps us be in our executive brains. It involves attention. It involves metacognition, thinking about what we're thinking about. It involves impulse control, and probably some of the other executive functions, all at the same time. So it's like a little workout for your human brain. Here is what one teacher said after incorporating mindfulness practice into her daily routine and into her classroom. I have less anxiety and don't get as overwhelmed as quickly as I used to. I am able to control my temper better and have an overall sense of peace most of the time. Sounds pretty good, right? So perhaps routinely incorporating mindfulness exercises into your classroom is just what some of you need to make your year a little bit more smooth and to stay in that river of well-being. For additional simple ways to get started, check out the Choose Love curriculum if you haven't already. They include facilitation guides for how to lead a mindful minute and other mindfulness exercises. And in addition to that, I really like these two card decks that you can get online. This one, Mindful Games Activity Cards, includes 55 ways to share mindfulness with kids and teens. You could just pick out the kid ones if you wanted to make it a complete deck just for teens. And this one, Mindful Kids, includes 50 mindful activities for kindness, focus, and calm. What I like about these kind of card decks is they can become part of your jobs in your classroom, so that a student comes up and selects a card and facilitates the mindful exercise. And that gives you, again, just one extra moment to breathe and get calm, get back in that river of well-being before you start your next lesson. A couple other resources for you to get started in mindfulness if you're not already include Zensational Kids. They're an organization that brings free resources to teachers through their website. And another resource, if you're wanting to go more in depth with a practice, is mindfulschools.org. So I showed you some videos from this program or from this organization, but if you go to our programs and then check out Mindful Educator Essentials and Mindful Fundamentals, you'll start to see their certification programs for you to go more in depth with your own practice, and that would also give you access to lots and lots of additional resources. Of course, they're for a fee, and I in no way make money off of this or am endorsing them for pay, but I really think those are great resources for teachers who are looking for a more in-depth way to decrease stress and stay in that river of well-being. And as we've talked about before, another great way to start incorporating this idea that we can stop and take a pause in our classroom and take a breath, that you can, and you can also signal to students when they might need to stop and take a breath and calm themselves, is to teach students the handy-dandy hand model of the brain. So next up is a video that we'll end with on how to teach students in elementary school how to use the hand model of the brain to think through what they're feeling in their body and to have a strategy to help them calm down. So shout out to Zach Austin and Shaw Elementary for this video called Why Do We Lose Control of Our Emotions?, produced by Kids Want to Know.
Imagine that you really want to play soccer at lunchtime, but when the bell rings, you can't find your shoes. When you finally get out to the field, the teams have been picked and it's too late for you to play. Maybe you got so mad that this small problem became a big problem in an instant. When we lose control of our emotions like this, we can call it flipping your lid, kind of like the way a pot might do if it was too full and too hot. A little while later, after you've cooled down, you might even feel sad when you realize that when you had a big reaction to a little problem, you could have hurt someone's feelings. What if I told you that this happens to everyone? Your parents, friends, teachers, and everyone else you know can flip their lid and lose control of their emotions sometimes. We all need to work on managing our feelings. Have you ever wondered why we can have such a hard time keeping our emotions under control? It can be really tough being a kid these days. There's just so much going on every day, at home, at school, even after school. Sometimes it's hard to keep a lid on things, and we act in ways that are not kind or caring, even though we don't mean to be hurtful. There are so many situations that we encounter every day that can cause our emotions to bubble up. Maybe you felt upset or frustrated when you were working on a problem or activity at school and just can't seem to get it right. Maybe something unexpected or embarrassing happened to you in front of your friends. Maybe you had something important to say, but didn't get a chance to say it. These and many, many more situations can cause both kids and adults to flip their lids. So why does this even happen? Well, it has to do with the way our amazing human brains work to help keep us safe. This is your brain, the part of your body that controls everything you do. Let's take a closer look at the parts of the brain and how they can work together to help us keep a lid on things. The brain is a pretty complicated organ, so we're going to use our hand to help us visualize what's happening up there. Let's imagine that our brain has an upstairs and a downstairs. Here, where our thumb is called the midbrain. This is where our emotions and memories are created and stored. Below that is your brainstem. The brainstem controls the things our bodies do that we don't have to think about, like breathing. It also controls our automatic reactions to certain situations. For example, if you touch a cup with hot tea in it and it's too hot, your downstairs brain feels the pain and will pull your hand away to stop you from getting burnt. It's an automatic reaction. You don't have to stop and think about what to do. Or imagine you're out on a hike and a bear wanders onto the path. Your brain doesn't stop and think, what kind of bear is it? Is it friendly? Your downstairs brain notices that you feel scared. It takes charge and in a split second decides whether or not you should fight, fly, another word for run away, or freeze. Because of the way our downstairs brain reacts to these situations, we can think of it as our emotional brain because it reacts instantly without needing to think things through. It's always ready to take charge in any situation to help keep you safe. So if this is our downstairs brain, then this part where the back of our hand and fingers are can be seen as our upstairs brain. It's called the cerebral cortex. This part of our brain helps us think logically, act with kindness, and think about how others might be feeling. It's also the problem-solving part of our brain. It helps us to think of possible solutions to a problem and decide which one is best. The upstairs brain is our thinking brain. Your upstairs and downstairs brain don't work alone. Your brain is set up so that the upstairs and downstairs brain can communicate with itself. It sends messages from section to section all the time about what our bodies feel and need. Let's take a closer look at our brain fist. Where our fingertips are is the logic and reasoning part of the brain that springs into action when we have a problem to solve, and usually it does a great job of doing it. But sometimes it can have a hard time solving a problem if the emotional brain and thinking brain can't communicate well enough. This can happen if your emotions get too overwhelming and your downstairs brain decides that this situation might be dangerous, even if it isn't really. And we all know what happens when our downstairs brain thinks you're in danger. It triggers our fight, flight, or freeze reflex. Our emotions start to bubble up and then suddenly everything boils over. We flip our lids. This can look like a scary, angry reaction, or it might be crying or running away from a problem. Now that we've flipped our lids, see how far away our fingertips are from the midbrain? When our lids are flipped, our upstairs and downstairs brain can't talk to each other. Our emotions have become too strong and we can't think clearly and can't solve the problem in a peaceful way. So what can we do to stop us from flipping our lid? Well, it all starts with realizing that we're about to flip our lid and then turning down the heat so it doesn't happen. Remember that soccer game we talked about at the beginning of the video and you were really upset and didn't get to play? Maybe you felt your tummy rumble or you felt your face getting hot? Did your heart start to pound and did you feel your hands start to clench? Were you frustrated, disappointed, and angry? These types of strong feelings are all indicators that you might be close to flipping your lid. If you feel this start to happen, it's a good idea to walk away, take some deep breaths, and look for an adult to talk to before you flip your lid. It might be a parent, grandparent, coach, teacher, or another trusted adult nearby. They can help you with strategies to solve the problem once you've calmed down enough for your upstairs brain to be ready to do some peaceful problem solving. If you do flip your lid, those same trusted adults can offer you some time and space to cool down before you start to problem solve together. Once your upstairs brain is back in charge, you can share your story and get some help. Using I statements can help you to tell an adult what you need. I need a hug. I need you to listen to what I have to say. I need another chance. I need some alone time. I need a walk. I need you to see that I can do well. Learning more about the brain and how it works can really help us to understand our emotions and to be peaceful problem solvers. When we listen to our bodies and our brains, we can turn the challenges of being a kid into opportunities to learn and grow. Thanks for watching! If you're interested in learning more about the brain and how to manage emotions, some resources are linked in the description box below.
I hope that was helpful and that something along the way in this video also sparked your attention and you might be willing to revisit it to bring more mindfulness or fun to your classroom. Next, if you'd be willing to take 5 to 10 more additional minutes, I have a reflection worksheet for you in your email as well. So I hope that is something you can use over and over and over again. And until next time, I'm wishing you well. Thank you for your time.